and I'm going to be talking about some stuff I've been working on during the first half of this quarter, basically figuring out what exactly we're going to do on the streaming side of things. Well, basically how we're going to send the stream out from the Podium computer and how we're going to display that stream on the clients. And I'm also going to be talking about what we did, or what I did to basically make a development environment on Windows, and then a little bit of other stuff. Alright, so basically there is about 4 different video plugins that are widely used. The first one is Flash. The problem with Flash is that it only supports RTMP streaming. Well, RTMP streaming is basically a protocol that was developed by Adobe specifically for Flash. So it isn't very well supported in like open source media streaming or media servers. So it's kind of difficult to get a good, not expensive RTMP server. Basically the only one that's really available is Wowza, which costs over $1,000 to license. And then there's Adobe's proprietary streaming software. So we kind of want to avoid Flash because it's expensive and it's proprietary, basically. And then there's QuickTime. QuickTime is basically Apple's media solution. It includes both basically a streaming server and a client. QuickTime's client, QuickTime streaming server is the server. But the main problem with QuickTime is that the compatibility with certain codecs and streaming protocols is bad. QuickTime advertises that it actually supports these, but getting it to actually work with them is difficult, and there isn't much support for that on the internet. Alright, and then thirdly, there's Silverlight. This has been being used more often, but it's still doesn't have very big market penetration. And in addition, it doesn't natively support streaming. You have to write additional code in the form of basically a source plugin that allows you to take streaming sources and display them using Silverlight. And then there's also the newcomer, which is HTML5's video tag. So this was basically proposed as an open standard. Issue is it doesn't really have any clear standard for video, especially for real-time streaming. So basically with HTML5 video, you basically just send it a URL to whatever you want it to display, and it may or may not actually display anything. Depends on the browser or depends on the operating system that you're using. So it's unreliable. And then you have these 2 standalone options, which are VLC and MPlayer, 2 fairly well-known open source video players. The problem is they don't have a browser plugin, so if students want to watch videos, they have to open them outside the browser. They can't just go to a web page and have it display in the web page. So all of these options have fairly major downsides. So sad face. But wait, what if you could combine the power of Java with the power of GStreamer? Well, that would be awesome sauce. And there's actually something that exists called GStreamer Java. I created basically a proof of concept applet that displays video in a web page, and you just basically pass it the URI to whatever video you want to play, and it'll basically play almost anything. It'll play stuff over the web just using HTTP. It'll display stuff using RTSP. It'll display stuff using RTP. So this is what I'm going to be working on for the next half the quarter, along with some other stuff. So now this is just a basic overview of the streaming architecture and how we're going to handle bandwidth allocation and connecting or client-server interactions. So basically, there's 2 different ways for streaming. One is using RTP multicast, and the other one is RTSP unicast. So there's two major paradigms for streaming. The first one, unicast, is when the server sends out one data stream for every single client that's connected to it. So basically the bandwidth that the server has to output is linear depending on the number of clients that's connected to it. And then the multicast is when you only send out one stream, and it doesn't vary depending on the number of clients. The stream is basically duplicated depending on the network architecture. So you can see if you follow the path, these circular things are routers or switches. It sends out one stream, and then at each junction point, the actual network hardware duplicates the data, so it's very efficient compared to multiple unicasts. This would basically allow us to support many more users connected to our streaming service than we would if we just used unicast. Basically our plan is to use multicast when we can. So basically when the client that we're streaming to is on the same subnet as we are, we can use multicast to dramatically reduce the bandwidth that we're outputting from the server. But when they're on like the internet or they're trying to access it off of campus, then we have to fall back to unicast. Yeah. Okay, so for the Podium software development environment, I basically worked on getting it stabilized for both Ubuntu and Windows side of things. So I made a setup script for Ubuntu 10.10, which basically makes it very simple to set up your environment. You just have to download a tar file and a shell script and execute the shell script, and automatically set up your entire development environment. And then I also made a new installer for Windows that'll set up your development environment on Windows as well. So you basically just have to run this executable, and it'll make the development environment for you. And then the other news is that using this, the Podium software now runs on Windows. So it's just a screenshot of our main UI running on Windows. All right, and then this quarter we're also getting in some new hardware. We actually already got one of these. Here's the converter box. But basically you plug in the VGA signal here, it comes out in HDMI here, and you plug it into the HDMI capture card. So it captures max 1080p at 24 frames per second, or 720p at basically 60 frames per second. And this capture card will likely only work in Windows, which is alright because we have our development environment working on Windows now. And this is arriving soon. This one, we got that one in. And that's it. Any questions? Well, it's just something that's really awesome, and you can't wait to try it. Caleb? No. But, alright. Does it run on Linux, do you know? Yeah, it's just an issue with interfacing with our current software too. I'm not sure how, or if you know how it interfaces with how it gets the actual source content for that stream. All right, yeah, I'll look into that then.